I want to say something about wind power, because this is another monumental hoax with corrosively damaging impacts on the health of decent, unsuspecting Australians who never thought their lives would come to this. Let me just quote from some of these letters I've received. Quote, "I'd hate to think I had to leave my home because a company has no regard for human rights and wants to maximise its profits at the cost of the residents' health and sanity living near a wind farm." Another, "I'd appreciate it if you'd take a look at my complaints to AGL and their pathetic responses. They show no empathy for anyone living in the area and who are suffering." Another, "For the past week," this was written to AGL, "for the past week I've been waking up during the night, not feeling quite right and my ears ringing loudly. It's all around me. I feel pressure behind my eyes and I'm agitated and I wrestle as I lie in bed. Last night was the worst because of this thick, heavy, dull noise absolutely penetrating my head. It's like a pressure that you can't see." Another letter, again to AGL and their operations manager. "I trust you had another pleasant and peaceful sleep, because I didn't. I went to bed at 10 p.m, and as my head hit the pillow I could hear a deep rumbling noise, just like distant thunder. At 11:30 p.m. I awoke with a vibrating feeling through my body, and my heart began to palpitate in my chest, and my pulse started to race, a very disturbing feeling. I'm literally shaking and in tears. I really don't know what I'm going to do tonight. It frightens me to think of it." These are grown men and women. I'm not talking about kids here. Another, "I get the feeling that you really don't give a damn, as you've not yet responded to my email of yesterday, and you're displaying a clear lack of interest in the plight of us." Another, "I'm demanding that the turbines be turned off at night. I've experienced something horrific that I didn't think could happen to me. I can still feel the vibration in my body, and it's frightening. I just don't know how I'll go tonight. If this is the effect from only 30-odd turbines turning, then what will it be like when all 140 are going?" Another, "I've had another experience with the vibration running through my body and my body shaking like a leaf. It's awful." I should say that letter from a Victorian writer was copied to the Victorian Premier. No answer. It went on at 2 o'clock. I went into my other spare bedroom to see if I could get some sleep, as it's my son's wedding day this afternoon, and at 2 p.m. I want to feel refreshed and happy, but you've robbed me of that. Just before 4 a.m, all of a sudden my head started to shake. I tried to focus on the ceiling, but my eyes were wobbling. I got up at 4 a.m. and walked around the house, my whole body shaking and vibrating. The letters go on and on. No one cares. Instead, you've got these fakes, like Flannery and others, and the Labor Party out there promoting the wind industry, and outfits like the O'Farrell government do nothing. And a carbon tax seeking to destroy the coal industry and preferring coal seam gas, solar energy and wind turbines. Remember Terry McCrann? The carbon tax is the most bizarre, dumbest, single greatest attack on our citizenry ever in our nation's history. The government's own Energy Market Commission, that's the government's energy advisor, has told the Gillard government that if we go down the track of renewable energy, household electricity bills will skyrocket by up to 30% by mid-next year. Will you see? We've done this week. What's happening to electricity bills? The Productivity Commission advised the government to scrap renewable energy subsidies. But without those subsidies, renewable energy cannot survive. The Australian Energy Market Commission says if we go down the renewable energy target road, business will have trouble securing adequate energy supply contracts. In other words, where is the energy for business and industry and manufacturing going to come from if a carbon tax makes coal-fired power unattractive? 80% of our energy comes from coal-fired power. It can never be replaced by renewable energy. But already this solar power is being fed into the grid. The price of electricity is going through the roof, and Julia Gillard today is going to try and persuade state premiers that she can do something about the electricity price increases which she is responsible for. Can you believe it? The arsonist is going to become the fireman. 0.6% of the world's entire energy needs come from wind and solar. 0.6. According to the Productivity Commission, the cost of electricity per megawatt hour, $79 from black coal, over $200 from wind. 3.5 times dearer. What about China? Wind power there is 0.05% of their energy needs. Solar are responsible for 1/1,000th of 1% of China's energy. Someone's got to stop this madness. Here we are creating massive dislocation to people's lives, sponsoring behaviour that's injurious to their health. Dr. Alan Watts, HDA, BSc, MB, CHB, LRCP, MRCS, credentialed, has talked about the fraud of wind turbines. This man was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia in 2004 for services to medicine. He's a member of the Royal College of Surgeons. He's a licentiate of the Royal College of Physicians. He wrote recently, and I quote, "The wind industry is based on greed, ignorance, subsidy, and institutional deceit. Its propaganda rewards the greedy, flatters the gullible, and exploits the well-intentioned." He wrote, "They, the wind industry, plunder our environment while enriching foreigners, all under the guise of some mythical societal benefit. They take our health, our land, our peace of mind, and our taxes." He wrote, "We surrender our precious mountains to this most gross industry, and in return they give us social chaos, environmental destruction, lies, deceit, scorn, and ill health." Wrote Dr. Watts, "Industrial wind is a fraud of enormous consequence, and people who value intellectual honesty should not allow themselves to be cruelly deceived by such industrial treachery or even by their government's callous indifference." In a letter to the editor of the Australian newspaper only 4 weeks ago, Dr. Watts said, quote, "What wind industry propaganda flatters the gullible, exploits the well-intentioned, and nurtures the craven. Industrial wind is a fraud of enormous consequence. People who value intellectual honesty," he wrote, "should not allow themselves to be quietly fleeced by such industrial treachery or even by their government's callous ignorance and indifference." He said, "It represents not only poor science and wasteful economics, but is ignorance in defiance of truth and indifference to the welfare of Australian rural families." Can't come any tougher than that. Dr. Watts is on the line. Dr. Alan Watts, good morning.
Good morning, Alan.
Thank you for having some guts, which is pretty unusual in contemporary Australia, I have to say, in a world of spineless politicians and many in the medical profession just as spineless. I mean, indifference to the welfare of rural families. I mean, you don't need to see my letters, you've seen them yourself. Why do these people have to suffer?
Well, they don't. The reality is they don't. Those letters that you read out, I could provide you with another 100 from all over the world of people who have written to me saying, am I practicing, can I help them, and so on. I had a letter the other day from a lady in California. Her husband's a lawyer. They're absolutely distraught. They don't know what to do. She's turned to me. I've done the best I can by sending her a letter and my advice. But the story that you're getting is the same the world over. We have a group of people who are totally, socially, and now financially being disenfranchised by these industrial wind turbines. They are of no consequence. They do not abate greenhouse gases. They are not efficient. They are expensive, and they are damaging people's health. They are tearing the guts out of our society, and they're tearing the guts out of our nation. And so we're asking rural people to carry the entire load of this renewable fiasco that we currently have.
Absolutely. And gutless government.
Totally gutless. Absolutely. And worse than gutless, they're actually ignorant.
That's it. Or they're complicit. They're complicit.
Yes.
They give them the green light. They're complicit.
We pay these people to have a code of ethics and to look after us. And instead, they're turning their back on us and they're just chasing the dollars.
You say the medical profession has a responsibility to speak out about the effects of the turbines, particularly in relation to the production of low-frequency infrasound, but people are writing to me and saying that sleep deprivation and ill health exist and have overtaken them and no one cares.
That's exactly right.
But you said of your doctors, you said also my colleagues have been a great disappointment to me. They don't want to get involved. This is an unpopular stance at the moment, but it's one we have to take. There are many parallels between the tobacco and wind industries.
Of course there are. We have big business, as usual, telling us there is no problem. Asbestos is safe. Smoking is okay. And now we have...
Coal seam gas is okay.
And coal seam gas is okay. And fracking is okay.
Fracking's okay.
And we're sticking bloody chemicals down in the ground. We have no idea what they're going to do long term, but it's okay. Mm. Trust me, I'm here to harvest your wind. I'm also here to harvest your taxes. Trust me, I'm a foreign company who can't wait to expatriate your precious financial resources overseas. And I will leave you a quarry, I will leave you a rubbish heap to live on for the rest of your life and for hand down to generations. It's sickening what's happening in this country, Alan.
It is
and
sickening.
It's about time everybody stood up.
But the reason O'Farrell and others got thumping majorities, they went around promising everyone it'd change, it'd be different under them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How disappointing is that? They've got an enormous majority. They've got a majority. They were in opposition for 16 years. They had 16 years to fix this, 16 years to hit the ground running, and they hit the ground crawling.
Why, in New South Wales, could it possibly be the case that wind turbine noise has been excised from the Protection of the Environment Operations Act?
In order to safeguard that industry.
That's correct.
And to deny the man in the street,
that's correct,
Joe and Joan citizen, the right to complain about industrial noise from wind turbines.
That's it. Excised.
It's a callous move to protect this industry from industrial noise.
What's the status of these government guidelines? Where are we on that?
They were supposed to be released in August.
That's right. And there are draft guidelines which ignore infrasound measurement.
Yes.
And the World Health Organization states the evidence on low-frequency noise is sufficiently strong to warrant immediate concern.
Correct.
Health effects due to low-frequency components in noise are estimated to be more severe than for community noise in general.
That's right.
So where then is the precautionary principle which says, until we can get answers, this has to stop?
Well, it's not happening. It's not happening. Even our embarrassingly quiet New South Wales Department of Health says, and I'll read, there is increasing evidence internationally that environmental noise exposure may cause risk to public health and is recognised by international bodies such as the World Health Organization that you just quoted and the US Centre for Disease Control. There is some suggestion of the long-term effects of environmental exposure to noise on annoyance, sleep disturbance, children's performance at school, hypertension and ischemic heart disease. Now,
frightening.
The federal government Department of Health and Ageing also agrees, that doesn't translate into any form of action.
No, none whatever, because they've got this global warming hoax afoot and the fight for renewable energy, and because of that we have to endure all of these consequences. You said wind industry propaganda flatters the gullible, exploits the well-intentioned and nurtures the craven.
Absolutely.
You said industrial wind is a fraud of enormous consequence, with its foundation based on greed, ignorance, subsidies, and entrenched institutional deceit. And that deceit is being practiced by government.
Absolutely. And you've got examples of it every single day. I attended the Senate inquiry 2 weeks ago. They tried to put through, this is Senators Back, Xenophon and Madigan. They put through an amendment, tried to put through an amendment.
Magnificent, yep.
And this is it goes under the fancy name of Renewable Energy Electricity Amendment, Excessive Noise from Wind Bill, 2012. It's a very simple little amendment. It just says that the regulator has the power to withdraw accreditation for any wind farm which is found to be non-compliant. In other words, breaking the law.
That's it.
Now, you'd think that's fair.
Yep.
If they're breaking the law.
You'd want them punished.
Yeah, pull their accreditation.
Don't support the amendment.
Withhold their RECs, their renewable energy certificates. Don't allow state-sponsored
But the amendment can't get through.
Can't get through. No. Lost on party lines.
You say I'm greatly saddened by my medical colleagues who seem too busy, preoccupied with rewards, or are too closed of mind to consider the science. You say these doctors are often too close to the wind industry, or too blinded by myth, when they must know our commitment is to man, and the oath of Hippocrates clearly lights our path. Well, it doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't at the moment, and it's absolutely true that I am grossly disappointed with my medical colleagues. It's about time they lifted their heads up from their desks and took a look at the evidence. The evidence is clear. We have international and national disquiet now that is of such proportions that we have to take notice of this. There are just simply too many people complaining of the same symptoms internationally for us to walk away from these people and forsake them.
Absolutely. I'm speaking to Dr. Alan Watts at 7:30. I'll stay with him. Environmental assessments, as in coal seam gas, are paid for by the proponent. It's just a manual to go ahead.
Of course. Of course. They're writing their own ticket.
So in an environmental assessment, a health assessment, a water assessment, a noise assessment, the proponent should have no influence whatever.
None. None. It should be absolutely performed by an independent body.
And shouldn't that independent body be funded by a levy paid by the proponent so that we can, in fact, get the objective assessment?
Of course. Of course. Why?
Not by the taxpayer.
No. Why should the taxpayer fund these developments when the only one making any profit from it, the only one walking away with a bundle of cash here is the proponent? He must pay.
That's right. But you've got draft planning guidelines here under the O'Farrell government. No data produced, no data referenced, no support for the conclusions they represent. Proposed noise limits are just random, not backed by any credible scientific research, no due diligence conducted on the potential adverse health effects of wind turbines. What the hell are these guidelines worth?
They're worth nothing.
Nothing.
They could have been written by the wind industry, Alan.
Absolutely.
Because this document, these guidelines have no regulatory authority.
None.
It's a poor document. It's poor.
Written by the wind industry. No suggestion there'll be legal penalties if so-called guidelines aren't met. No suggestion that wind farm operations would be closed down if they didn't comply. No due diligence involved in any investigation or research or what's best for the health of people. I mean, it is beyond belief, isn't it?
Of course it's beyond belief. I mean...
And then there's a disclaimer at the end of it, or preceding it rather, which disclaims any responsibility for the use of the guidelines.
And if you think that's bad, just go and look at any, and I repeat, any contract with a wind developer, and look at the gag clauses.
That's right. Silence the host. Don't you love the fact they call them the host? This is the poor bloody farmer that's been invaded. He's called the host. But the contract silences the host. The poor host has been sold all this spin, thinks, oh, well, this is all right in the interest of renewable energy, then finds he doesn't want it and he can't speak.
That's right. That's right.
And I mean, these things are an industrial development. Why shouldn't, if they're going to occur, and I don't think they should exist because they're subsidised by taxpayers, they can't survive without taxpayers' money, but if they're to be anywhere, they should be placed on industrial zoned land.
Of course, and taxed accordingly.
Yep.
But what we have at the moment is a proponent comes along, the farmer owns the land, he carries the major cost of purchasing the land, he pays the annual rates. If you and I put in a building development, we're asked for a Section 94 contribution towards curb and guttering, swimming pools, library, whatever. The proponent for the wind development pays none of that.
No.
None of that at all.
None at all.
Well,
it's like the coal seam gas bloke. He gets all the water for nothing.
Yes, doesn't pay the rate.
The irrigator's got to pay for his water. The coal seam gas industry gets all its water for nothing. It's unbelievable. I mean, doesn't a simple question, because I know you come from the bush, from Carcoa, doesn't the economic benefit of agriculture, both economic and environmental, far outweigh the financial rewards of wind turbines?
I believe it does. There's a couple of reasons why. First of all, the proponents will tell you that by having a few turbines, you're actually drought-proofing your farm. That's not so. 2 or 3 turbines are simply not going to be sufficient to drought-proof your farm. Second of all, they have access to it. Third of all, so they can come at any time, leave gates open, introduce diseases, whatever. You are now constrained agriculturally because you can't overfly these areas. So if you have weed spraying, fertiliser application and so on, these are all constrained. And then, of course, there's the loss of income from the production, agricultural production, from simply having these things there. And then loss of land values, estimated to be between 25 and 40%, depending on the degree of visual amenity and in the intrusion into the rurality here. So I cannot see that any farmer would think that this is a...
But see, the poor farmer can't be fully aware of the ramifications of what they're doing. They can't afford appropriate legal advice.
And they need legal advice.
Of course they do.
You read one of these 20 or 30 or 40-page contracts, and they are built to deceive. They are draconian. And you cannot believe reading some of the sections where they absolutely absolve the proponent of absolutely any responsibility at all.
Completely.
The farmer carries the whole lot.
But wouldn't you think a government, which is worth 2 bob, would say to anybody, whether you're building a house or building a wind farm or a coal seam gas, well, before any contract is signed, we must have objective and independent health, economic, water, aesthetic, environmental assessments, whatever they might be. Before you start, we need to know these things.
Of course. Otherwise, how can you safeguard the people that you've
Absolutely.
been entrusted to protect?
Yep.
You're turning your back on these people. You are giving these people absolute carte blanche to come in here and rip these societies to bits, these agricultural areas to bits, with absolutely no penalty.
Just
Even
unbelievable.
when they break the law.
I mean, this stuff's...
They're compliant.
Absolutely.
There's no penalty here, Alan.
Yeah, and the reason they won't come on this program, they can't answer questions. They can't answer, so they avoid the questions, and they just hope it will all go away. I mean, these guidelines, it's rubbish, been cobbled together, bit here and a bit there, a bit of a cut and paste job from a couple of bureaucrats. Alan Watts, you're a star, but where do we go from here?
Well, what we have to do is we have to have a moratorium. We cannot continue to build these things not knowing what the full ramifications and the dangers of them are. We need independent research, and it has to be funded by the wind industry because they're the ones who are
causing the damage.
Profits.
Yep.
We've been calling for this for years now. There is sufficient anecdotal and even some scientific proof now that there is a significant problem. We can no longer ignore this.
Go down to the MacArthur Wind Farm in Victoria and talk to a couple of people. You'll find out a few truths.
Absolutely.
Listen, we'll keep in touch. You are fantastic. Stay the course.
I shall try.
Good on you, Alan.
Okay.
Dr. Alan Watts, HDA, BSc, MB, CHB, LRCP, MRCS, highly credentialed. A doctor. Awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for services to medicine, a member of the Royal College of Surgeons, a licentiate of the Royal College of Physicians, who wrote recently, the wind industry is based on greed, ignorance, subsidy and institutional deceit. Its propaganda rewards the greedy, flatters the gullible and exploits the well-intentioned.